are told to work hard to become independent and successful in life, but we're also told to give joyfully and not to cling to the things we work so hard to get. God reminds us that everything is His. We are entrusted on this earth with time, talent, and treasures. In this podcast, we will learn to live as Jesus teaches.
Welcome back to Entrusted by God. We're so glad that you've taken time out of your day to share with us in this brief 20-minute podcast. I'm Pastor Steve Wood. I'm the pastor of Mount Pisgah Methodist Church. I'm joined in our journey by Dwayne Wood and Ray Bachman, who are brothers and disciple makers. And our deal is talking about living life God's way, and especially as we learn to steward all that God has entrusted unto us for His glory and for the common good of everyone, regardless of where they're at in their spiritual journey. So today we're blessed that God has kind of sharpened the focus, that today we would speak about just one of the elements that we talk about when we talk about stewarding all that God has entrusted unto us, and that is the area of talent or gifts. Not just spiritual gifts, but certainly that, but as well just practical gifts in the way we're wired. So we thought it'd be good to look at a verse out of 1 Peter, and Dwayne's going to share that, and then we're going to kind of practically engage in a conversation around how that's lived out. Dwayne?
1 Peter 4:10. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. And so, guys, we talk about talents all the time, and Pastor Steve kind of mentioned that we have spiritual gifts, and then we have natural gifts, our personality, passions, desires. And I think, Ray, it's really important to, if you are a disciple of Christ, to use some tools to try to determine as best you can what your spiritual gifts may be, but also at the same time, what your passions are as well. Because I'm kind of one that believes that there's an intersection between your passion, your giftedness, and needs. And when you find where those three things intersect, that's kind of the sweet spot. And maybe we talk a little bit about our place assessment that we have available here at the church.
Yeah, what is the area? Which website can the members go to on the website?
That's a great question. You can go to our website at www.mountpisgah.org and just put in the search bar the place assessment. But you can also go to placeministries.org, and that is the direct website that will take you to a spiritual gifts inventory that includes personality blends, abilities awareness, where your passion is. Dwayne, I think you mentioned that it's the intersection of where your passion meets your giftedness and your call, and then the life assessment. It's about $15, take a place assessment, and it's well worth it because, man, it just really helps you hone in self-discovery on being who God created you to be, using the gifts God's gifted you to use, and specifically applying yourself in that scenario.
It even applies in the secular world too. Not only is important to, and we'll talk a little bit more about your spiritual gifting, but I've got a company of about 20 some employees, and when we have a position that's open, we have them take an assessment to find out, is this person gifted in the areas of the position we're looking for? And it's almost like putting a piece of a puzzle together, where there's missing parts and we look for that specific person. And so I think that's so true professionally, but I think spiritually, it's important to know what your spiritual gifts are so that you can exercise them and you're in your sweet spot. They always say when you're in your sweet spot, your batteries are being recharged. When you're not in your sweet spot, it's like your batteries are being run down. Now, that doesn't mean, let's say I don't have the gift of servanthood. Does that mean that I don't serve? No, it means that they may not be the first thing when I hear about somebody having a need. I may not be the first person to jump on board, but it doesn't exclude me from being part of helping that person in whatever way of servanthood. But I'm just a big believer in really assessing what God has gifted you with. And it's generally, it's more than just one gift. And he's built all this different, it talks about in Corinthians about everybody has different gifts, teaching, serving, giving, all kinds of gifted. And so it's so important to find out, how did he wire me so that I can use these talents to the best of my ability? One of my gifts is leadership. And I guess that's why he gave me this company. But at the same time, I need other parts of the body to help me in that leadership position. So it's not a one-man band situation. If you have a gift, it's not like you're the full package. You're part of the bigger package, but you need to find out where your place is so that God can use you most effectively.
Well, that's a beautiful illustration, Ray, of how it works when we're willing to steward our gifts and our passions and our call. And it speaks to Paul's words in Corinthians, we're one body with many parts. So, if we're sick, let's face it, the person we want praying over us is the person with a spiritual gift of prayer and intercession. If I gave you a choice, all right, hey, look, we've got someone here who's been praying over people for 40 years. We've seen a lot of prayers answered. We've seen some people miraculously healed as this person has stood in prayer for them. Or I've got a new seminary student that would like to learn about prayer, but we're not basically convinced that it's in their spiritual gift set. We're just trying to discern that. If you were sick, who would you want you praying over? Yeah.
We'll take the senior man and let the young man be his apprentice.
Yeah, there we go.
Lord.
That's a great idea. Yeah. And so how important it is. So, think about this. Every church, I'll guarantee you, has someone. They show up early.
Yeah.
They make coffee for 1,000 people. Okay. Everyone comes in and drinks the coffee. Everyone comes in and enjoys the coffee. Everyone leaves thinking that was really good coffee. No one ever thinks about someone came to serve, to prepare that coffee, put it out, keep it hot, keep it full. And there's a prime example of people who will often, in self-deprecating humility, say, "Oh, Pastor, I just like to serve." But what a gift.
Yeah, it's always nice to give them an attaboy as well. They're not looking for praise by any stretch of the imagination, but the people with the gift of service, it's good when we do recognize and say thank you. Just thank you. But I've used the place assessment with my groups, the men that I disciple, and it really is interesting. Ray, I know that you have a background in use of these as corporate, as I've got a background in using them for corporate purposes, but looking at them from a spiritual gift standpoint, it's very enlightening because people don't always quite understand exactly what gift that they have. I know for me in particular, and I believe the gifts sometimes can change. I
yeah.
really believe my gift changed about 7-8 years ago, and my primary gift, I would have never, ever, ever said that, that was the primary gift. But after going through the place assessment and going back and looking at it, it's like, oh yeah, I see that now. And I think there's a lot of those wow moments for guys that have gone through these assessments. And, stewarding, we're talking about stewardship. How can you be a good steward if you don't know what the gift is?
Yeah.
And so I encourage people to reach out and find some system to figure out what those gifts are, because we're all gifted in different ways, and the body of believers, we make a complete unit as the body, hands, feet, eyes, legs, because we all bring different giftedness to it.
Yeah.
It's a special thing, quite honestly.
And I think along with the assessment, I think it's a good kind of an idea to ask those around us, whether it be a spouse or close friends, and ask them, what do you see as my giftedness? What do you see that really turns my heart and really turns on the green lights? Because when you're in your sweet spot, it's so natural. Like you said, Pastor, that person that went ahead of time and prepared the coffee and cleaned up, to them, they were excited about it because they love to serve.
Gift.
Yeah, that's their gift. It's like God regenerates their batteries. So it's the gifts that God gives us aren't things that we don't want to do. It's the things we do want to do. It's not a have to, it becomes a want to. And so they're probably, your giftedness spiritually is probably more obvious than you realize. But like Dwayne said, I think it's something to really pursue. And prior to maybe even taking the spiritual, questionnaire, you may want to just ask, your spouse or close friends or some coworkers and saying, hey, I'm trying to find out what my giftedness is. And sometimes I'm blind to my own self, but what do you see as a gift? And then once you kind of get your hands around those multiple areas, then focus in on that. Now, I will say this, there was a guy I discipled for a couple of years, and he started kind of getting the interest in investing in another person, discipling them, and didn't have a great experience. But I remember talking to him later on. He said, I don't think discipleship is my gift. And I'm like, it's a commandment. We're all called. Now, your way of discipling may be different than my way, but it's a calling for everybody to go into the world and make disciples of all nations. And your way may be different than mine, and my talents may be used differently than your talents, but don't exclude yourself thinking discipling is a gift. It's a process of using our gifts. So don't discount yourself and say, oh, that's not for me, that's for you, because it's a calling on all of us. It's just that we do it differently based on the giftedness that God's given us.
I think you're onto the you're onto the direct object in this verse. It's not an open-ended thing. You've received a gift from God. You should use the gift. Look at this. There's an object in this. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others. Wow. And so, that's what builds the body of Christ up. That's what raises people who are in need of hope and encouragement up. Mm-hmm. And that's how we prove to be faithful stewards. Not that we would just use it for our benefit or maybe our business benefit or our family benefit, but we're called to use the gift to serve others and to build up the body of Christ.
Yeah, the body of believers that I'm privileged to teach and disciple, they'll hear it out of me all the time. Your job is to determine what your spiritual gift is, because you need to bring it to the church, to the body of the church. We need what it is that God has gifted you to do. Mm-hmm. Well, how do I really know where my passions and the place assessment does a really good job because it matches up your passions. But I don't know where I heard this from. I read it, I learned it, but it's not original to me. But when you find that intersection point, Pastor Steve, that we were talking about, where you find that intersection point, you do not get tired of doing the service using the gift. So if you're, for instance, a man could be a financial whiz at his job, but the church wants him to do financial stuff, but that's not what he's gifted. He may be gifted at that, but that's not what he wants to do. He's got another passion, and God has gifted him to do other ministry work with another passion, as opposed to pigeonholing him into what he does 40 hours a week. And so I would tell someone that my advice would be, as you're figuring this out, when you go and serve with your gift, if it's energy building for you, no, that's your area. If it's draining, and there's parts of our jobs that we all have to do, you do them, you may have the gift to do them, but it drains you. If that's draining, that is not where your passion is. You know, it's better to let someone else do that, and you do this thing that you get energy from.
If it's draining, in most cases, we call that our job. Yeah. So, yeah. If it's invigorating, that's when you got this lineup, this alignment, like you're talking about, Dwayne, where you experience the call, you see the work of God, you see the hand of God, and it just really fits. There are some specific calls and gifts that are really interesting, but they're non-traditional. For instance, we've got a handful of people here who are wholeheartedly committed and sold out to going to a local prison facility on Fridays and doing a Bible study and worship. It is their thing. They are great at it. They love it. They have to be like hospitalized sick to miss it. All right. But it's not it. I mean, it strikes fear in most people. They'll say, that would not be my cup of tea. That would not be my cup of tea. But the beauty of the fact that we're all called in simple ways to serve, and then in some very specific and unique ways, we're gifted to serve as well. And we've come full circle back to a great instrument to discover that is the place assessment. And if you'd like to take that, we'll be happy to help you walk through it and interpret it and see what it means in terms of your application. And we have the opportunity to serve you that way. You can reach out to us on the website, www.mountpisgah.org. And we're just grateful for have the opportunity to engage and help you along. You know, one of the keys to joy in life is understanding what Jesus meant in Mark 10:45. Even the Son of Man has come not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. In the days ahead, that you could find your life by giving it away for God, what a blessing. Let it be so, and until we meet again, have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Join us next time as we continue to learn to live with open hearts and open hands as followers of Jesus Christ.